Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Death Row History Channel. I am your host, Mr. Toad, and tonight I have a different video for you. I had the pleasure of watching a video recently over Leon Czolgosz, the assassin of William McKinley, on the Death Row Executions channel. And it brought a question to my mind. Mr. Czolgosz was executed by the state of New York in 1901 for the murder of William McKinley. Mind you, he didn't technically kill McKinley, but he got the blame. But the interesting part is Leon Czolgosz was executed at Auburn State Penitentiary. And today, most people, when they think of New York and the electric chair, they think of Sing Sing in Ossining, New York. But from 1890 to 1916, there was 3 electric chairs that ran in New York. One at Auburn, one at Dannemora, Clinton Correctional Facility, and one at Sing Sing in Ossining, New York. But the question that has always boggled me is why? Why would the state of New York need 3 electric chairs to carry out the same sentence? Well, the answer to the question is simple. Because New York is a big enough state that if you committed a crime in the western side of the state, so Buffalo, Syracuse, anywhere from Buffalo and Syracuse west, you went to Auburn. If you committed a murder, a capital crime, from Albany north, you went to Dannemora, and New York City, you went to Sing Sing. There were correctional districts, and each district had an electric chair. Now, there would be 696 people executed by the state of New York from 1890 to 1963. 55 of those would be at Auburn State Penitentiary, 26 at Dannemora. Auburn quit in 1916, Dannemora quit in 1914. In 1916, the state of New York switched to 1 chair at Sing Sing. So, Sing Sing State Penitentiary would put to death 614 people from 1890 until 1963. So in a 73-year span, they would put to death 614 people. Sing Sing alone. Altogether, as I said, 696. Put that into perspective. Texas, which leads the nation right now in executions, from 1982 until 2020, so in a 48-year span, Texas has only executed 570 people. So, New York in 73 years executed more people than Texas. Texas would have to step its game up in order to achieve that feat. Because at the time, that the electric chair was running in New York, it ran nonstop. Sing Sing Prison in 1891, their first execution in the chair wasn't one person. It wasn't two people. It was 5 people. They started at 4:30 in the morning, and they didn't stop until the last one was dead. The only common factor was it didn't matter if you were executed at Dannemora, Auburn, or Sing Sing. It just said death by electrocution. There was no distinction on which prison it happened in. It was just death by electrocution. However, the highest year for Texas was 2000, when 40 people were put to death in that year. And Sing Sing had a history of doing 3 and 4 executions a day. I know 1891 they did 5. 1914, there was a day in 1914 where they did 4. There was 1944, Lepke Buchalter, Jaime Weiss, and Louis Capone were executed, one right after the other, in that order, Capone being the last one. What makes that interesting is Louis Capone and Jaime Weiss were so loyal to their boss that they even ordered the same last meal as Lepke Buchalter. Little interesting fact there. But I'll get more into that in a future video. New York also had the distinction of the only photo taken in the history of the United States from the death house happened in 1928 in the state of New York with Ruth Snyder. I will do a video later covering the role of the media in an execution, the restrictions and etc. Because people don't realize exactly what a witness can and can't take into the death house. And that all comes from Ruth Snyder. I have my signature North Texas mug filled with black tea, but this is just a fun video, little break from the monotony. I have other videos coming. I'm doing research as I find time. This is just a quick video with a little bit of research, but as I was reading the chat through the premiere of Cholgod's video, I mentioned the fact that New York had 2 electric chairs, and people were surprised. Well, I forgot about Dannemora. I don't understand why I forgot about the ice box, but I did. And at the time that Mr. Cholgaz was executed, they were executing people at Dannemora. They were executing people at Sing Sing. In fact, theoretically, the executioner, the state electrician, as he was known, which was a private individual who was hired by the state of New York and the state of New Jersey and the state of Maryland to perform executions, theoretically could start his day at Auburn, go to Dannemora, go from Dannemora to Sing Sing, depending on the time of the execution. and execute someone in all 3 places in one day. There is a book written by a former executioner for the state of New York, but my pockets are not deep enough because the only copy I found available to the public is $450. I don't have that money, and even if I did, I would not spend it on a book. I'm not that interested. It would be an interesting story, but I just don't have the monetary means for that. But New York also would set after the execution of William Kemmler, which I covered in my video, in my series over the New York Death Commission, they changed the protocol of the electric chair to what we know today as SOP. By that I mean, William Kemmler, they put the electrode on his back. They put one on his head, one on his back, on his spine. And the next person to be executed after Kemmler, they put it on his leg. That would be SOP from 1890 until today. If you get electrocuted in Tennessee or any state that offers the electric chair, they will put a skull cap on you with a sponge, natural sponge, and a electrode on your calf, both soaked in salt water as conductors for electricity. The other interesting thing is, I stand corrected, the execution of William Kemmler, they executed him, the amount of electricity was 1300 volts. The first jolt was 7 seconds. The second jolt, they just threw the switch and pretty much kept it going until he quit moving. Yeah. But they would, over time, fluctuate until New York would eventually reach about 1800 volts. That seemed to be their sweet spot. And other states would go on up to 2000. It's trial and error. You run a trial and you see the error. I personally would not want to be involved in that process on any side of the equation, particularly the conductor in the equation. But the notable names to be executed in New York, a lot of notable names. You had William Kemmler, Leon Czolgosz, Jaime Weiss, Louis Capone, Lepke Buchholzer, which I listed, Ruth Snyder, 1928. There's a famous newspaper photo of her right before the execution, which caused public outrage. You had the Rosenbergs, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, which arguably should not have been put to death. I see that one as more of a political ploy than a actual sentence, but I'm just one individual, and I don't understand the whole reason behind it. But folks, this is everybody's favorite mythical creature, the one and only Mr. Toad, with the Death Row History Channel, saying